don't know how many of you do this, but you look at something and you have that mechanism in your head that just goes, that's unrealistic. I don't know whether it's human nature or whether it's just something that we're blessed with on the United Kingdom, that we seem to see things and we tend to err on the side of unrealistic. It just seems safer for us. So I want us to get in the right frame of mind this morning. Now, we've had that wonderful video that talked about the 100 churches being planted, but I want us to understand maybe some of those things that seem unrealistic. So I need a volunteer. Is there anyone here who thinks they are particularly good at holding their breath? Someone? Go. Okay, so I'm going to count you down. You need to hold your breath. Okay, ready? Steady, go. We've got a real issue if you have the capacity to hold it for as long as the world record. Okay, you keep going. Just put your hand up when you're done and I'll stop the timer. I realised that the risk is someone could be really very good at this and it would take the whole morning for this to happen. So if anyone near her wants to make you laugh, that would be wonderful. But this idea of... Are we done? Are we done? Superb. Okay, that's maybe my fault, but that's fine. Okay, that was 27 seconds, which isn't bad. 27 seconds, which is, by seconds, fairly close to the world record. Other than the fact they also did it for 22 minutes before they did it for 22 seconds. The world record for holding your breath is 22 minutes and 22 seconds, which seems somewhat unrealistic, but is recorded, has been done. Then, of course, there is that idea of the Rubik's Cube. Anyone want to guess? Some of you may know how long this gentleman takes to solve a mixed-up Rubik's Cube. Watch. Yes! 3.134, I think it was, seconds to solve a Rubik's Cube. He only gets to see it in the moment where he handles it. That's the first time he'd have seen the underside of it. I mean, there are people in this room who I'm sure have played with Rubik's Cubes, maybe even some of you when they were first released. Maybe we're not that good. It's unrealistic. Maybe you're one of those people, and sport sometimes helps us to understand that, who thinks, you know, I'm quite good at jumping. I'm not going to ask anyone to try, but I will ask, Helen, would you come? If you can just take the string, one end of it, I shouldn't have put this in my pocket, and if you just walk that way, and I'll go this way. When you get to the door, if you stop, no, actually we'll stop that. We're nearly there, Okay, so this is the distance for the longest long jump in the Olympics. I mean, I'm struggling to talk to you without the microphone, let alone jump to you. Maybe, thank you, you can let go, I'll just pull it back in, thank you. Maybe you think of yourself, maybe long jump's a bit hard, maybe you could jump high. The highest recorded jump at the Olympics is just over 8 foot, so that would mean you'd need to be able to run and jump over me, plus nearly half of me again, which seems a little bit unrealistic for us. But these things are hard. Maybe running is the place that you feel like you could manage it.
Away first time, good start from Bolt. Bolt leading a moment and going away. Gay trying to go with him and he's being dragged through to second place, but he's going to win it by 2 meters. 9.58. The world record's gone. That's more like it. Sub 9.
9.58 seconds to run 100 meters. I struggled to get round the church in that. I nearly did ask Steve Hayward to try and run round all of you to see if he could make it in that time. It's unrealistic. That distance for the long jump was 8.9 meters that a human jumped. 2.45 meters for the high jump. Usain Bolt ran the 100 meters in 9.58 seconds. Someone solved a Rubik's Cube in 3 seconds. Someone could hold their breath for 22 seconds. It is unrealistic. That's the problem that we have. Maybe you're sat there thinking, Can't run, can't jump, can't solve a Rubik's Cube. It's unrealistic, Tim. It's unrealistic for me to assume that I would have the capacity to do these things. I wonder if anyone sat here has been in that situation where you've seen that girl across the room or that boy across the room and gone, you know what? I'd love to ask them on a date, but they are out of my league. It is an unrealistic expectation for me to consider a relationship with them. In work, how many people have looked at a job description and gone, I would love to go for that, but it's unrealistic. I don't have what it takes to do that. There's something beyond me in the job description that means it's just unlikely, unrealistic for me to do it. The truth of the matter is, I wouldn't mind so much if I was stood here talking about our lives, just our lives. Running, jumping, jobs, dating. The concern as I spent some time in this passage that we're going to look at this morning is I realised that this mentality of unrealistic has seeped into my Christian faith. I look at things within my faith and have decided they are unrealistic. It's as if we've made unrealistic a benchmark. If we can make it unrealistic, we don't need to even try to attain it. Thank you for trying to hold your breath for 22 minutes. But we've made unrealistic a benchmark. If I can label it as unrealistic, I don't even need to try. If I can just get it into that field of ridiculous, beyond, then I don't even need to try. We end up defending unrealistic. I couldn't possibly do that. It's too much for me. No one could really. Maybe we use the line, if I didn't have all these other things going on, then maybe, but just with everything as it is, it's unrealistic for me. I wonder if you take a moment to think back. Maybe you don't use the language unrealistic, but how many situations in the week that's just gone have you looked at something and even in your subconscious just dismissed it? No, unrealistic, not possible. Not even going to give it the time of day to try it. As I said, we seem to have made unrealistic something of a benchmark that we aspire to, a way of protecting ourselves for the fear of failure. And the danger, as I said, is we've started to seep that into our Christian faith. And if we're doing it in our Christian faith, then we're going to start doing it with what God's saying to us. So if you have a Bible with you, I'd really encourage you to turn to Acts 2 with me. If you have a device that has the Bible on it, please do find Acts 2. It will be on the screen as well for those that don't. It's a passage that I have read countless times. A passage that for many of us we've looked at as building blocks for how to do life. Acts 2:42 on reads like this. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone as he had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Please hear me. As we go into this message, this is not being delivered as condemnation, but hopefully as a challenge. Because as I've wrestled with this passage, it has created a huge challenge for me this week. A huge challenge. So I hope it is one that will give us a way of moving forward against this tide of unrealistic attitude that can so often hold our faith. A wonderful passage. You're not expected to be able to see it, don't worry. Be unrealistic. Thank you. But I want us to look at some of the key characteristics. Here we read, there was the apostles' teaching. There was fellowship, breaking of bread, prayer. They had awe and wonder. I don't know how any else of you watched that video for Wales and were like, Wales is beautiful. I need to travel around Wales more. But they were lost in awe and wonder. They were together, had everything in common, sold as they saw need. Sold as they saw needs, committed to meeting together, broke bread in their homes, had glad and sincere hearts, praised God, enjoyed the favor of all people, and then, as if just to rub it in, the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Has there ever been, maybe some of the stuff Jesus did, but has there ever been a more unrealistic passage for the modern church to try and live up to? It's the question we have to ask ourselves. Because it's in the Bible, and it wrestles with everything that we want when it comes to comfort and ease for the way things often work. It's just unrealistic. The problem we have is, back then, they didn't have Netflix. Life was easy. Back then, they weren't worried about phone battery, or worse, phone signal. There was none of this walking around buildings with their arm in the air hoping to get one bar. They didn't have it. They didn't have to worry about bills like we do. They didn't have to worry about traffic and 20-mile-an-hour limits. Life was easier for them. Of course they could do this, Tim. They didn't have to wrestle with any of the stuff we did. Back then it was realistic, but now it is just too unrealistic. I wonder if anyone noticed the word that wasn't included in the list of attributes that I gave to the people. Devoted. If we thought that list was unrealistic before we add that word in, it's just gone off the chart. They were devoted to the apostles' teaching. They were devoted to breaking bread and prayer. They were devoted to giving up the things they had to give to those in need. They were devoted again to breaking bread in their homes. They were devoted with glad and sincere hearts. This is a ridiculous passage. A ridiculous passage, and one I have fallen more in love with this week as I've spent time in it. The question has to be, is it unrealistic? Now, I Googled, because this is the kind of boring person I am, I Googled how much time do I need to give to something to be devoted? Google has no answer. Google does not have the capacity to comprehend the time it takes to be devoted. I could find the meaning of devotion, to love, to be loyal, to be enthusiastic, but I could not find an answer for the length of time. So I had a think. And then we did Romans on Thursday, and that really helped me to kind of grasp maybe where I was thinking with this. And the truth was this, and this is why it isn't a message of condemnation, because if I'm honest, it just left me sad when I had to ask myself these questions. I want you to think through the lens of devotion. What do I love? What am I loyal to? What am I enthusiastic about? And then if you stack up all the things that you did, what receives the most of your devotion? Maybe another way to put it is, what receives the most of your time? When you have free time, where is it that you pour yourself into? Now, I appreciate there is a reality of work, of sleep, of eating, but in those other times, where is it you pour yourself into? When payday comes, what are the things that you've been waiting to purchase? What are the things that you want, again, after you've paid bills and all of those other things? What are the things that you want to have? If I were to speak to your friends that you spend time with in the week, and I ask them, what are the things that they're talking about? What would they say are the things that come up most frequently when you talk? We raised it in the week. If I took out your phone, what would it tell me about the things that you are devoted to, that you spend your time doing on it? Where do we pour ourselves into? Where do we pour our love into? Where do we pour our loyalty into? Where is our enthusiasm? Because that's where we'll find the things that we're devoted to. Because that's the absolute truth. All of us, whether we like it or not, are devoted people. We may not recognize what it is we're devoted to, but we are devoted. If you want to, go home, map out last week, write down the things you did, you'll find it. Oh, but Tim, I have to work. Cool, you're devoted to your work. Still devotion. I'm not saying whether they're good or bad things, I'm just telling you that you are devoted people, which means suddenly this passage is slightly more realistic, because devotion isn't beyond the capacity of anyone in this room now. So we're beginning to get to grips with what we're seeing here. Again, I don't know if you're like me, but I like structure. I like to know how I'm doing with things. So we're sat there going, you know what? I really hope Tim tells me how much do I need to do to get into the devoted category with church. 2 hours on a Sunday? Maybe I need to add a prayer meeting once a month. 2 hours and a prayer meeting, Tim, seems pretty devoted to me. Maybe I need to add in 2 hours at church, the prayer meeting, and communion. Does that constitute devotion? Does that look like enough time given? We want to know what we need to do. We want to understand what are the markers, what are the tests that we can do. But the truth is, time alone is not enough. Time alone is not enough. Again, we could ask that deeper question. How much do we talk about our faith? How much do we share? We hear Jesus saying, go. And are we going? Maybe we talk on a Sunday morning about our faith over coffee. Maybe we have a small group of friends, a small group we gather with. Maybe we're one of those people that posts a Bible verse on social media. How much chat is enough for me to be devoted to him? I need an answer. I need to understand how to get to this devotion level that we see there. But time and chat aren't enough. You see, my worry is we want numbers. We want to know whether we can just box this into unrealistic or not. That's what we're asking. The reason we want to gauge is to decide, can we manage it? And if we can't, we dismiss it as unrealistic. It was easy for them back then, but it's not possible now. We want to know how we match up to the levels. But my concern again is that we reduce faith by doing that to a collection of actions and tick box objectives. I don't know if you've considered this, but some of the people who held those records weren't always record holders. I wonder if as a child, growing up in Jamaica, whether Usain Bolt was told it was unrealistic for him to ever consider being an athlete on a global stage. As a child, he was devoted to sport. All he did. All he did. I wonder if at 10 someone said to him, be realistic. Don't imagine you'll ever be the most famous athlete on the planet. I wonder if at 18, when he turned professional, his coach said to him, have realistic goals. You're good, but be realistic. I wonder how many people told him that his dreams and ambitions were unrealistic. Because as we saw in that video, it took him 9.58 seconds to show the world what was realistic. With training, with commitment, with time, with effort, with energy, with resistance. By bringing around the right equipment, putting the right people around him, getting up after failure, making sacrifices. Having an attitude of learning, possibly and quite probably for an athlete, changing his diet. I wonder how many people told him it was unrealistic, and then what we see is that no, it isn't unrealistic. Now, there may be someone here that can run quicker than Usain Bolt. I'd suggest maybe we're not in the category of people that will. But again, when we read this list of the early church attributes, when we read through that passage, and we'll read through it again in a moment from Acts, we need to remember it's not a list of attributes for us to try and tick the box of. It's an expression of a heart state. That's what we're reading in Acts. We are reading a contextualized expression of a heart state for God. The people had time, so what did they do with their time? They poured it into being with one another, to hearing what Jesus had done. when they had money, and we know they didn't have a huge amount of money because they needed to sell things to be able to give money to the people that need it. But what did they do when they had money? They gave it to people that needed it. It is an expression of a heart state of the people. The list will look different for us because we don't have a temple court. Does that mean it's unrealistic? No, it just means we need to understand, what does my heart state look like fitting into a life of devotion that we saw the early church living out? What does the heart state look like for me? What is it that I am called to by God? Because it's deeper than actions. Because there are some actions that are unrealistic for the stage of life that we are in. But to desire, to pursue a heart state of devotion to God is not. Read again with me. Mark's going to pop it on the screen for us, what we read in this passage, and stop looking at it as a checklist, but start looking at it as an individual who woke up every single day of the week with a heart state that allowed them to live a life that looked like this. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone as he had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Please hear that last line. Added to their number daily those who were being saved. They weren't just popular. It wasn't just they were the cool group to hang out with. Their lives were allowing people to see God, and people were saved. This isn't just a popularity contest. This isn't just a group gathering that's drawing other people in. This is a life that allows others to see something that changes their eternal destiny. That's what a life of devotion outworks itself as. It impacts those around it. It's not just about ticking boxes, making sure you're attending enough things. If we feel called to this life of discipleship, to following Christ, of deepening our relationship with the Father, then we need to consider, what is it we are pouring ourselves into, our time into, our finances into, our concentration into, our talk into. What's the first thing you begin to think of as you wake up? What's the first thing that you think of? What's the thing that most occupies your mind at its rawest moments? What's the first thing you do as your mind begins to wander or as you get bored? What do you do when you have a blank evening, no plans? What's the first things that come to your mind, to your agenda? Again, please hear me. People have houses that need cleaning. This isn't condemnation. This is, where is it that I go in those spare spaces? Where is it I go? What is it I'm devoted to if I look at the cold, hard facts of my life? Because the truth is this, there is something very distinctive about the pattern of life of someone who is devoted to God. There is something very distinctive about the pattern of life of someone who is devoted to God. And the amazing thing is that pattern will look different for every individual because we're not all called to be the same. But there is something distinctive about those of us who seek his face, who follow him, who choose to devote our lives to him. The pattern will change for each of us. The outworking may be different for each of us. But please hear me, a life of devotion is not unrealistic for any of us. A life of devotion is not unrealistic for any of us. In fact, I believe it would be the distinctive nature of each of us that sets us apart in the way we live our lives that would see our number added to those who are being saved. Not because we've mastered the formula here at Moriah and we can roll it out to our community. Not because Mark and I have got a great course on Romans and everyone in Risk is going to start rocking up to it. Because of the lives that you live are so distinctive, because the core of your devotion is God, others will see that. Others will see that. This isn't a message saying quit your jobs. Please do not quit your jobs. It's a message saying, be a person who is devoted, so when you go into your workplace, people see something distinctive about the way you live your lives. Don't start shunning family members because they don't believe what you believe. Go into family conversations being distinctive about the way you live your life so that they can see something more than just you, but God. That's what we're reading in this passage, a collection of people who set their lives up in a way that allowed them to be devoted. I wonder how many of us yearn to have a faith in Christ, to be a disciple of Jesus that is at a level of devotion. Not attendance, devotion. So coming to close, I want to share a quote with you from Brennan Manning. There we are. I read it in case you can't see it. The greatest single cause of atheism in the world today is Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their lips, walk out the door and deny him by their lifestyle. That is what an unbelieving world simply finds unbelievable. The greatest single cause of atheism in the world today is Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their lips, walk out of the door, and deny him by their lifestyles. That is what an unbelieving world simply finds unbelievable. This is the polar opposite to what we see in Acts. This is the polar opposite to what we see in Acts. Acts is a group of people who know what they're talking about, and yet their lives live it in a way that their words could never do justice to. I have spent time in my Christian faith playing this game, knowing everything I need to say in here, knowing exactly how I need to conduct myself in here, and out there look nothing like who Jesus called me to be. And yet my friends knew I was spending Sunday morning in church. All of those things we called unrealistic at the start, all of those things that we've seen record breakers do are not unrealistic because a human did them. Somebody did a Rubik's Cube in 3 seconds and a little bit. Someone held their breath for longer than I have the attention span when I watch telly. Usain Bolt ran faster than most of us think to get up in the morning. It is unrealistic maybe for us and the journey we are on, but it is not unrealistic because somebody did it. Which means what we read in Acts 2 is not unrealistic because people did it. They devoted their lives to following this incredible way of living that is what we would call Christianity, what they understood as just following God. It's not unrealistic. Just a few adjustments to give us some insight can make all the difference. How many of us could get up 10 minutes earlier just to spend a little bit longer praying in the morning? Just small adjustments begin to change that mentality, change that heart state. How many of us could commit to attending the communion service? Not because it's a communion service that we're attending, but because we want to come and break bread and remember what Jesus did. I don't care who sees me at it. I want to be at the table, remembering what Jesus did. How many of us need to think about putting our phones down and picking our Bibles up just a little more? Little changes that allow unrealistic to become realistic. And realistic becomes a habit, and a habit becomes a lifestyle, and we become people of devotion. It was not impossible for the people in the early church. It is not impossible for us to be a people of devotion. The world doesn't need to see our church schedule. The world needs to see the heart we have for God. The world needs to see something in our lives that speak of why we do what we do and who we do it